Blog Talk Radio.
But now, if Miss Ogunleye, Dr. Ogunleye, are you there? Press 1 on your phone so I may open your mic. Ogunleye.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you better now. Hold on 1 second. Let me give a nice little announcement. What I just now discovered, and people have not been noticing, if y'all remember the broadcast that was done by Dr. Donna Richards, a.k.a. Murma Ani, when she was talking about Urugu, but she did a broadcast that was done back in 1992 about a book called Nation Building by Akoto. That book is now brought back in reprint. The book is titled Nation Building, Theory of Practice, African-Centered Education by Kamal Ayoyi Akoto. I think I pronounced his name right. So those who heard about the book from Dr. Muramani almost 25 years ago, because that book was taken out of print back in 1992, so is now back in service in print again. For those who, want to, further educate yourself or your children on how to, build a nation, besides all other books, you can now get that book on Amazon. So, I just want to shed that information out, which is a good thing. You heard that, Doctor?
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah. And people forgot to say when Miriam Ani did a broadcast, now I forgot the name of the broadcast she did again, but it was done back 26 years ago. She talked about a good book, not only 2,000 Seasons, but also a book called Nation Building by Akoto. She said that was a must-get book, because that book lay out a lot of things, a whole lot of things. And I think it's written by a man from the Senate. So, and I think one time I had the PDF of that book, and it was good when I read the first few pages of it, but it was sad that they took off print. I know why they took off print, because it was political. So now to know that it's back on the shelves as reprint, I advise people that if they care about building a nation or are serious, they should invest in buying that book. So I'm just letting people know that that book is back in print again for all those who listen to this broadcast tonight. And I'll repeat it before the conclusion of the broadcast one more time. And usually I would share it in the chat room, but he said something was going on BCR. But anyway, since you're on the line, Doctor?
Yes, I'm here.
What are we going to talk about tonight? What chapters are we going to be covering?
It's actually, I said chapter 12, but it's actually 11 and chapter 22 of my book. And both of these deal with the Yamasee War.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I skipped to those so that I don't want to give away too much information, and who will want to go and purchase the book or go and get the e-book. So I thought I would just present some information about the Yamasee people and actually the Gullah Geechee people as well, and how they were not going to take their oppression just lying down. They were fighting back. And so I think these two chapters will give you an indication of not only the role played by the men, but also the role played by women in their effort to set themselves free. And while I talk about the Yamasee War, I think it's important to understand that these people, the Yamasee people, they were pushed to their limit. You have the Europeans coming in, people from Great Britain coming in primarily, although you had the Germans, they were there, and the Dutch and so forth. But they're coming into South Africa. This is where the first part of the book takes place. And they were really abusive to the people. And this had been going on for quite some time. And so the Yamasee men and women, when they had just about enough, they said that they were going to fight back. Now, the people that they were fighting against were called the Goose Creek men of South Carolina, and they were basically the people who were appointed by the kings and queens of Great Britain to go into South Carolina and start a colony there. And so the people that went there, the traders and the government officials for the British, they were very, very abusive to the Yamasee men, women, and children. And they were doing all sorts of heinous crimes against these people. They were raping, maiming, killing. They would kidnap young girls and make them sex slaves, and tell the children that if they tried to leave and go back to their people, they would find out who their mothers and fathers were and their other relatives, and they would kill up the whole family. So that you had children that were afraid to leave these abusive people for fear of what would happen to their parents. So they're mating with these people out of fear. The European people are killing them for sport. Like there was one man, he went to do some shopping at one of the trading posts, and they just decided that they wanted to blow him up. So they loaded him up with gunpowder and then just killed him just for fun. So in the book, it's a historical fiction, but I have a lot of actual facts, events that occurred during this time period. So when the Yamasee people could take no more, they decided that they were going to take their revenge, and if need be, they would flee and go back to what was now called, what at that particular time during the 1700s, we're talking 1750, was referred to as Florida, but we have to realize that all of these names were given to these places by Europeans. There was no place called Florida or South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Virginia. These are names that the European people put on those areas. And the Yamasee people and other indigenous people, autochthonous people, they didn't have names for that place. They viewed it as being one landmass. One of the names that they referred to it as being was Turtle Island. And if you talk to the Yamasee people even now, they will tell you that they're related to the Olmec people. And I guess we first heard about the Olmec people by listening to the brother that wrote the book that came before Columbus, and his name, I don't know, but it's his old age is Ivan Van Sertima, thank you. Okay, so we hear about the Olmec people, and he's not the only one who talked about the Olmec people, but I think people really became aware of who the Olmec people were by reading. They came before Columbus or listening to lectures by Ivan Van Sertima. So the Yamasee people will tell you definitely that they are related to the Olmec people. And if you listen to a lot of European people, they'll tell you that the Olmec disappeared. No, they did not disappear. We are here. We didn't go anywhere. So the Yamasee decided they were going to fight back. Now, one of the reasons that they really decided, in addition to being tortured, humiliated, basically decimated by these European interlopers, one of the things that the Europeans tried to do, and they're still trying to do it today, is to tell them that they were not indigenous to the landmass. So how did they do that? Started referring to these people as being Negroes, Africans, coloreds, knowing good and well that they were not those people. But once you establish them or refer to them as being Negroes and coloreds and Africans, they were basically saying, well, you're no more entitled to this land than we are. You came here from Africa. You're not indigenous to this land. You're a Negro. You need to go back to Africa. So once they did that, they were basically saying that the Europeans had just as much right to be in what became known as the United States of America as the Yamasee and other native people had the right to be here. Because after all, they were both immigrants. And the Yamasee kept on trying to tell the people, no, we're not immigrants. We're indigenous to this land. We're the autochthonous people. And that was one of the reasons why they fought. And if you think about it today, they're still using those names to try and deny us our right to this land, being autochthonous to this land. So they're referring to us as Negro, Black, colored, African, and so forth. And while we shouldn't be ashamed of being African, because this is Northwest Africa, a Mexam, we shouldn't be ashamed of that. But to say that we came from across the water is a barefaced lie. Now, some of us did come from across the water, but it's not as many people as we've been led to believe that were brought here. There were a lot of people that were already here. If you do a lot of research, you'll find out that the Europeans, whereas they present these light-skinned people with long braids and feathers in their hair as being the native people of this land, they know that they're lying. And even in their research, they'll tell you that when they went into South Carolina, for example, the people that they found there were copper-colored, and their hair was not the texture that they show of these so-called Native American people now, who are really just white people, Europeans or Mongoloids. They will tell you that their hair was nappy, and they'll describe them as being very dark in complexion. So they knew who they were dealing with, but now they've changed the information to try and lay claim to the land and say basically that the Americas were barren lands. There was nothing here. There were no civilizations here, and they know that they're lying. So the Yamasee people were basically tired with all the things that they were forced to deal with in terms of these European people, and so they began to fight back. And in 1715, they had a meeting with the so-called Goose Creek men, who were basically representing the proprietors in England, who decided that they didn't want to come to England. They just wanted to reap the rewards, the financial rewards of the animal skin trade and other trades that they had going on with the autochthonous people. And so they had a meeting with them and told them that the abuses had stopped. And, of course, the Europeans promised that they would no longer abuse the people and they would no longer refer to them as being Negroes and coloreds and so forth. But deep down inside, the Yamasee people and other people, because they didn't fight just against the Yamasee, other people joined them in their fight against the British. they began to realize that the Europeans had broken so many treaties before that they were going to again break a treaty with them. And so they sought revenge. And one of the things they did to a lot of the so-called Goose Creek men is that they killed and tortured them. And after the other Europeans that were living in South Africa in the area of Charleston and the Sea Islands, when they realized that these Yamasi people and other autochthonous people were not playing with them, that they wanted their land back, they all basically cleared out. And one of the areas they went to was called Charlestown at the time, which they now refer to as being Charleston, South Carolina. Now, even some of the European people who realized that what was occurring, what was being done to the autochthonous people was problematic for them. They couldn't, they couldn't support what was being done by the Goose Creek men and other British people and European people, I should say. They wrote about this, and they were punished for writing about the ill behavior of these European people. And one of the people that wrote about what was occurring, or the lack of morals of these British people, was a man by the name of Reverend Gideon Johnston, and he was an Anglican church cleric. And I just want to read a quote from him. This is something that he recorded, and the other European people punished him because of it. But I just want to read this. It's a short paragraph. I'll read it, and then we can proceed. And I'll give you another quote to someone that talked about their lack of morals. But Reverend Johnston said, "People of polite society are the vilest race of men upon the earth. They have no honor, no honesty, no religion enough to entitle them to any tolerable character, perfect medley or hodgepodge made up of bankrupts, pirates, libertines, secretaries, and enthusiasts of all sorts, the most fastidious and seditious people in the whole world." Now, this is what Reverend Johnson said about them. And to punish him, they would not allow him to become the person in charge of the Bureau of Indian Affairs that they had started, because they didn't want to deal with the autochthonous people fairly. They wanted to disseminate them. And so to execute them, to get rid of all of them, to execute them. And so they punished Reverend Johnston because they figured he would deal with them fairly. Someone else who had something to say about the treatment of the autochthonous people was Bartholomew de las Casas. And although he encouraged the Europeans to enslave Africans as opposed to the native people who were basically decimated, he had to say that the goal of Europeans was to rise to the highest state that's disproportionate to their merit. So, in essence, the Yamasi people just got tired of it. And so in April of 1715, they decided that they were going to go to war with the Europeans. And that's basically the chapter that I deal with, chapter 11, is once the war has begun and you have the native people who are fleeing from South Carolina, or they're leaving, they're not fleeing. They're starting war with these people, but the first thing that they did was to to send all the women and children away. And that's something that the Yamasi people did, and the Gullah Geechee people did as well. The first thing they did before going to war, they would hide their women and their children. And then after they knew that their children and their women were safe, then they would go to war. And that's something that really troubled the Europeans, because they wanted to do a lot of damage to these autochthonous people, and if they really wanted to harm was the women and the children. And if you think about that, even now, where you have the Asian men slapping the women, European men slapping, kicking, punching, killing the women, they do that because they know that the women and children are vulnerable, and they wouldn't dare. They're cowards, so they wouldn't dare take on men. So they decided that they're going to mess with the women and the children. And I guess the Yamasee people, knowing that that was their character, they decided that they would not allow their women and children to be taken advantage of. So one of the things that happened once the war began is they sent their women and children into Florida and parts that we now call Georgia in order to get away from the European men who would try and harm them first and foremost. And so the chapter 11 is called They Must Die or They'll Avenge Their Parents' Death. So you have the Yamasee and Gullah Geechee people leaving South Carolina. They're on to what was now called Florida to escape whatever mayhem the European people decided that they were going to rain down upon them. So this is the beginning, or I'm going to read a little bit from, or I'm going to read chapter 11. It's a pretty short chapter, and I'm going to read it. And in this chapter, we talk about the women and the role that they played during the Yamasee War and the Gullah Geechee War. So it was dawn, and the Gullah Geechee and Yamasee women and children and their guards had been on the road for 5 days. As they were traveling, they came across a makeshift camp of several poor British families who were all sleeping in holes, as poor Albions tended to do, that they had dug in the ground. And that's something that we're not told about, but a lot of the poor European people, they couldn't afford beds. They couldn't even afford homes, basically, to build homes, and they would dig holes in the ground, and that's where they would sleep. So I wanted to really focus in on that to let people know about the conditions of some of these European people when they were first arriving here in what we now call the United States of America. They were sleeping in holes. That was their beds. I'm going to continue. Inquisitive, talking loudly, and pointing at the Albions asleep in the holes in the dirt, a young Gullah Geechee child said, "Mommy, why are those Albions sleeping in those holes in the ground over there? They have everything, so why can't they afford to sleep in beds?" The young Gullah Geechee child's mother responded by saying, "Shh, we don't want to wake them." "Too late, niggas," said one of the men. "You've already woke us. You're kind of far from the plantations, ain't you? There's about 100 of y'all, so where the hell do y'all think you're going?" The poor Albion man, other half-dressed Albion men who came running to assist him, "Jeb and y'all, bring your rifles and come here. We got ourselves a catch. We're going to march all these nigger squaws and their black bastard children back to the plantation where they belong and collect us some money. We're not going anywhere with y'all, and where we're headed is none of your goddamn business," said Essie, the formerly enslaved Gullah Geechee woman. "Y'all need to go back to sleep in those holes you dug in the ground that y'all poor European trash tend to use for your beds before you get yourselves in a world of trouble." The poor Albion man, talking with a hillbilly brogue, said, "Y'all hear this nigger bitch? She said we're going to get ourselves into a world of trouble. I think you're confused, bitch. It's y'all who have a heap of trouble heading your way." The British men laughed prematurely. They were shocked when they noticed about 15 melanated men who appeared out of the darkness. One of the Gullah Geechee soldiers accompanying the women and children to Florida said, "As Auntie told you, it would be wise of you all to just mind your own business and go back to bed. You slaves need to show us some respect. You hear me? I'll beat you, boy," said the trashy Albion man who started the confrontation. The Gullah Geechee soldier's retort was, "I'm not a slave, and I'm not your boy. I'm going to repeat myself for the last time. You and your buddies need to get back in those holes in the ground that you call your beds while you still can." The poor Albion man, who had been doing all the talking, raised his rifle. But before he could get his shot off, not only was he shot, but all the other men with him were shot and killed, and spouses and girlfriends came running toward the Gullah Geechee and Yamasee people, firing their weapons, so they were killed too. A teenage boy picked up one of the weapons and fired, but lacking skills, he missed his targets. He was shot and killed by the melanated men too. There were about 10 children, ranging from an infant to a boy about 13 years old, who had watched in horror as their family members were gunned down. Chloe, with her gun drawn and cocked, stepped to the children, who by now were lined up almost horizontally. All of the children were screaming and crying, and the older children were begging for their lives and the lives of their younger siblings who didn't quite understand what was going on. Kill them all, said Chloe. We have got to kill them. If we don't, when they get older, they will hunt us down and murder all of us to seek revenge for killing their parents. It's either our survival or theirs. Chloe shot the infant, then Ayla and the other women cocked their weapons and finished off the job. They buried the indigents in the holes that were once their beds, and then continued their journey to Florida. Cognizant of what had occurred, but for their mental well-being, they willfully chose to remain unaffected by the carnage. So that's chapter 11. So you not only see the men,
No, go on. I was
going to say, you're not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I remember reading that chapter because I stopped at over 100 pages, and that chapter caught my attention out of many chapters. To how they know so they don't want to, like, say, get revenge, and then want the seeds of the ones they revenge to come back and search them. So they just get rid of all of them now. So they have to look back at that. That's the thing I got out of that. But go ahead.
And really understanding that they were at war. You know, and when you're at war, you do what you have to do. You know, I remember people were very angry at Khalid Muhammad when he was talking about what was going on in South Africa. And he said, kill them all, you know, because if you don't, you're going to have a problem, you know, and people were very, very angry at him. How could you say that? You know, what are you talking about? Why would you want to do that, you know, to innocent?
I explained.
No, but,
But he explained himself. He didn't just say, kill them all, that's it. He's explained thoroughly so people get an understanding. Just like you hear that chapter right there, it explains what he already knew.
Right. And you look what happened to him, and look at what's going on in South Africa now. Things are no better than they were before. You know, and people, you know, they have all sorts of praise for Nelson Mandela, but the one they should be praising is his wife, who just recently died. What has it been, about a month that she passed away? You know, she's the one basically kept his legacy alive. You know, but he didn't deserve it. And you see what he did once he got out of prison. He got rid of her. You know, and there's information that's coming out about him now, about who he was really in love with, and it wasn't a woman, and you know, other things that he did. But the point is, the condition of the people in South Africa has not changed. If anything, it has deteriorated, and a lot of it is not really taking their struggle seriously and dealing with it on the level that it really should be dealt with. And I've seen some films, some videos that is showing these people in South Africa and other areas of Southern Africa preparing for war against these people. You know, but what are we doing while they're preparing? Are we preparing for war? Or are we in church crying and begging Jesus to do right by us? You know, and so, you know, in the book I wanted to let people know that these people were not waiting for their pie in the sky or someone to descend on earth and make things right for them. They took their freedom in their own hands and dealt with it in the way that it needed to be dealt with. And that was the reason why I wrote that chapter in that particular way. And then the next chapter I want to talk about, it's called The Send-Off. Now, there's one individual, I take him out of context, or out of his time period. I put him into the 1700s, but actually he didn't come on the scene until the 1800s. But it's a British man that actually existed. He was a Scottish man. And his name was Nicholas Adamson P. And he had a plantation that was 10 miles long. 10 miles.
Wow.
And one of the ways that he was able to acquire all of that land, 10 miles worth of land, to build his plantations was because the British, during the Holocaust of enslavement, had a program called the Head Right Program. And so every an autochthonous or enslaved African, a particular European possessed, they were given 50 acres of land. And so P was able to acquire all of the land, not just from the autochthonous and African people he enslaved, who were actually enslaved by him, but those that died on the way to his plantation. So just as long as he could prove that he had written documentation that that particular individual was captured and was on his or her way to his plantation but died, the British granted him 60 acres of land for each person. So you can imagine how many people, either dead or alive, who he enslaved to actually gain 10 miles of land, 10 miles for his plantation. And one of the things that he did was he was a breeder. So he would have men and women procreate, and then he would sell the children. Louisiana, wherever. Louisiana was big for accepting children who were bred in Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and other places. And, they had the people in the European people in Louisiana, they were known for their quadroon balls, where they would get, the Spaniards also had it, and also the Spaniards at one time possessed Louisiana. But they would get these biracial children, and even pure autochthonous people, and they would have them attend these quadroon balls, and the European men would look them over like they were cattle or something and decide who they wanted to have become their concubines. And so Nicholas Adamson P. is one of the people that was known as a breeder during this particular time. And it's funny because two of the women that I talk about or that I put into my book were women that were actually enslaved and had become breeders. And one of the women's name was Tyra. And I think about Tyra with America's the model program that she has. So there was actually a woman back in the 19th century whose name was Tyra. And then there was another woman who was actually a breeder, and her name was Wendy. And when I think of Wendy, I also think of Wendy Williams, who is, the stuff that she does is enough to make people really ashamed. And she thinks that she's doing something precious and special. When European people get tired of her, they're going to, send her packing just like they sent Bill Cosby and Morgan Freeman and the rest of the people packing. And they have all kinds of information on her, her drug abuse and even her recent drug abuse. And you have the Charlemagne the God, who was talking about he hopes that she's learned, and this is recently, where he was talking about that he hopes that she's learned her lesson in terms of getting high, because I think when she was absent for her program for almost a month, about 2 or 3 months ago, one of the reasons, the reason why she had to take off that time was because she had begun to slip back into her drug abuse. But anyway, so I chose these two women, Wendy and Tyra, to basically let them know, you can't escape this. And there have been women before you, that were used and abused by European men. So this chapter is called The Send-Off. And so Nicholas Adamson P., he was in North Carolina. That's where he had his plantations. And he said he had so many children. He didn't, from breeders that he couldn't even keep an accurate count because there were children that were being born every single day. So I put him in South Carolina, whereas he was actually in, this man lived, he existed, he was in North Carolina, and one of the things that he was known for is naval stores. So he would sell tar and pitch and trees, and he would export that, out of the country into Europe. And he made his money that way in terms of European markets. And then in the United States of America, one of the things that he became noted for was his breeding services, among other things. And so I put him in South Carolina, and now he's still into breeding and putting on sex shows for European men decide if they want to deal with his breeders. And in addition to that, he's doing hemp and rice and cotton. So I put him into South Carolina, but he actually existed in North Carolina. But the man existed, and I hope if there's a hell, he's rotten there. So anyhow, so this is the chapter. It's called The Send-Off, and it takes place in one of the breeding houses that this man has erected. So I'm going to start reading from this. I hope I've given you enough information that you kind of understand what will be going on in this chapter.
No, it's good. It's good. Let's get into the chapter.
So all the heads of the Yamasee Nation were invited to Charlestown to sign a peace treaty with the British colonists in November of 1718. After the signing of the treaty, Miko Patofa of the Yamasee Nation and Ganju of the Gullah Geechee Nation met and talked. Now, this 1718 is when the Yamasee War ended. And the Yamasee people did sign a treaty with the British, but they knew that the treaty that they signed with the British was no more valid than any other treaty that had been signed by the Autochthonous people. So I'm going to continue. Well, it's done. As per the treaty agreement, we've ceded our coastal territory north of the Savannah River to the South Carolina government. The government will in turn give that land to its rich settlers for a pittance in order to restart the colonization process. And basically, after and I'm not reading, I'm just going to give you a little information. Basically, after the Yamasee War was fought, the British would have basically had to go back to Great Britain or wherever the hell they came from if it wasn't for those white or so-called white Indians, those Europeans posing as Indians. The British would have had to go back where they came from. But the so-called Cherokee and Chickasaw and Upper Creeks and other people, they stepped in and they fought the war for the British. Because of their fighting, the Yamasee signed the treaty and the colonization process started again. So I'm going to continue reading. The government will in turn give that land to its rich settlers for a pittance in order to restart the colonization process. There's really nothing much left for us here. Some of our nation's people will stay, but many of us will be headed to Florida. But our retribution for all the crimes the Europeans have committed against us has only just begun. Just because we're leaving and me and the other Mikos signed that treaty doesn't mean this war is over. We'd be fools to trust the Albions. Name one treaty the Europeans signed that they have ever abided by, said Miko Patofa. Likewise, we're leaving South Carolina to join our families who are waiting for us in Red Mound Town. We'll decide whether we want to stay there, join one of the already established settlements that existed there for almost 100 years, or if we'll establish new settlements in Florida. But before we leave, there's one more military operation I hope you'll assist me with, said Ganju. Anything for you, my brother, said Miko Patofa. There's this motherfucking piece of scum of the earth named Nicholas Adamson P., who has to be exterminated before we leave this place. That savage P just moved here from North Carolina. In that British colony, he took advantage of the British government's fraudulent head-right executive order to confiscate 10 miles of indigenous people's land. On that ill-gotten land, he built numerous plantations, several breed houses, and a prosperous trade in naval stores. Now, to further exploit the British head-right system and to add to the mayhem he's already caused, he has just about finished building a massive cow pen here in Berkeley County along the Cooper River. His stud house has been completed, and to introduce himself to wealthy men and so-called bigwigs here in South Carolina to notify them about his breeding services, that fucking bastard had 3 of his captives, a man and 2 women, put on a sex show at the governor's office in Charlestown. Some of those so-called well-to-do men joined in and raped the women as well as the man. That corrupt ass bandit, Somerset, was there. His cronies say he can't stay erect long enough to please a woman or to produce a royal heir, but he bent that poor enslaved man over and stayed hard in him, pumping and gyrating for a real long time. We can't continue to allow these hellish Europeans to ride roughshod over us, take our lands, and sexually abuse and mistreat our men, women, and children and get away with it, said Ganju. It's settled, said Miko Patofar. P dies today. Let's round up our men and give that motherfucking degenerate a surprise visit this evening. His demise will be our proper send-off, and his execution will send a clear message to the rest of those troglodytes that vengeance never sleeps. Tonight will be the best time to strike. The colonists are celebrating, drinking, and fornicating because they think the war is over and they can go back to committing their dastardly deeds. You know that while they're claiming a victory against the Amassilation, we suffered very few casualties during the war in terms of death and injuries. It was primarily the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Coweta peoples who the Europeans warred against and murdered and maimed these past 3 years. It was those fucking treacherous half-breed rats that betrayed us who did most of the suffering and dying. But it was us, the Yamasee people, and our real enemies who killed and crippled the majority of those fucking colonists. And we are the ones who destroyed practically every last thing the British took possession of dishonestly. Anyway, the area near where P built his cow pen are still abandoned for the most part. Most of the former squatters are still held up in Charlestown trying to figure out what to do next. There's really nothing for those fucking animals who hightailed it out of here to return to. We razed their properties and smashed up their supposed precious keepsakes. We took their livestock and we destroyed their crops and their stinking provisions and delicacies. Then Blackbeard and his fellow pirates scared the fucking shit out of those goddamn bastards when he took several well-heeled Carolinians as hostage and blockaded Charlestown seaports. Those stinking ass Brits were shaking in their fucking boots as they quickly gathered up all the medical supplies and other items Blackbeard demanded so that he'd lift his barricade and their unscrupulous business practices could resume, said Miko Pachofar. Provisions will have to be made for the people held hostage on P's plantation once we kill him. If they choose to, they can journey to Florida with us, but some of them might want to return to North Carolina to be reunited with their families. They can always join one of the established settlements in Dismal Swamp or create new ones. P has a large stable of horses and carts that we can use to transport the people, and we'll take his livestock and anything else of value with us as well, said Ganju. That evening, 30 Amasi and Gullah Geechee soldiers arrived at P's cow pen. Because he was new to the region, only his large Georgian-style home, the stalls for his horses, and his petrifying stud house had been completed. P's standalone kitchen, chicken coops, pig pens, and cow barns were near completion, but the quarters for his captives had not been started, and he had no intention of using quality materials or his skilled enslaved workforce to do the building. P's captives were expected to build their own residences during their limited free time when they weren't working for him. He ordered his hostages, numbering 60 men, women, and children, to use grass, coquina, and mud to make their huts and to sleep outside until their dwellings were completed. The cash cow, the stud house, was eerily repulsive and noisome. It was basically an oversized, shoddily constructed log cabin and could hardly comfortably accommodate the 8 sets of breeders he consigned to that building. The cabin was approximately 3 rooms deep and 1 room wide, and it was constructed with inferior hand-hewn timbers interwoven in cross-notched fashion. And instead of using quality pieces of stone for chinking to seal the spaces between the logs, he ordered the joints to be stuffed with straw and old rags and then sealed with mud from the local subsoil. The lack of regard for the cabin's construction had made the building extremely hot that past summer and almost unbearably cold during that late November. But while little or no attention was paid to the building's design or the materials used for its construction, there were heavy metal bars on the 2 small windows, and the reinforced door that was locked and chained from the outside to make sure that the captives could not flee was sturdy, well-built, and secured with a heavy-duty chain and padlock that were virtually impenetrable. Inside P's house of ignominy, the accommodations for the young males and females held prisoner there were atrocious. There were no bedsteads or mattresses placed upon them. The captives were forced to copulate on straw mats that were laid on the dirt floor. It was the elderly enslaved women on the plantation who were forced to weave those mats. However, the women did what little they could to improve the makeshift beds on which the captives were forced to lay. The aged women empathized with the younger sexually exploited prisoners of war because, lamentably, more than a few of them had also been forced to be breeders, or they had their children sold away from them during their primes. So to give those captives who were victimized because of their prized physical strength and alluring attributes some semblance of comfort and dignity, the senior women used the same care, workmanship, and meticulousness in making the straw mats the enslaved sex workers were forced to lay upon that they used when weaving their world-renowned and coveted sweetgrass baskets and tapestry. And those wise and women weaved, they uttered the incantations of their ancient autochthonous and African peoples to cast spells and curses of death and reprisal against the wicked transgressor and his family into each and every blade and strand of sweetgrass thread and fine wood that they used to make those ungodly straw mats. There were no partitions between the paths to offer the forced breeders even a scintilla of privacy or to engender in them any feelings of their self-worth. Lanterns and buckets of half-filled, murky-looking water were the only divisions between the mats where the forced breeders were interlaying and coupling. Moreover, P arbitrarily paired the prisoners based on their physical attributes as opposed to their capabilities or compatibilities, or affinities. But on the other hand, enslaved and indentured carpets painstakingly designed and erected the partition in the stalls where P's prized horses were housed and mated. Female horses were not mated until P was sure they were in suitable health and physical condition for mating, and the horses were thoughtfully and selectively matched with their steeds based on their temperaments and compatibility in order to produce and capitalize on the most desired traits in their offspring. Proper hygiene was not mandated or even encouraged in the interest of saving time. The men could, but were not required to use the water in the pails that was rarely changed to wash their genitals before moving on to the next woman. Nor were the pregnant girls and young women made to wash up before accommodating the next male. Dingy white pieces of sheet partially covered the straw mat, and dried as well as recent sweat, semen, stains, and other bodily fluids was evident on the makeshift bedding. The couples were not allowed to cover their naked bodies so that P and his overseers could make sure that they were copulating, that the couples were procreating. Of note, on Sunday afternoons after church services, P would allow European men of all ages to come to his stud house and take turns raping a few of his selected female captives for a fee. And any European man who claimed that one of P's male prisoners had committed a crime against him could punish the supposed offender anally for an additional fee. P was an unattractive, thin, pasty, weather-beaten, and sunburned man. He was in his early 40s and completely gray-haired, and from the appearance of his countenance and gait, he could easily be mistaken for someone in his late 50s. Just minutes before the melanated soldiers stormed the cabin, P was standing near the stud cabin door with a long brown best musket, in one hand and a lash in the other. And he was loudly and obnoxiously directing captives on how to perform sexually to supposedly maximize the chances of the young females being impregnated. He said, "Come on, boys, put some more action into your movements. Them girls is ready for you. So what the hell is wrong with y'all? Harder," I said, "harder. Y'all ain't going to pop no babies in them there girls that way, the way y'all moving. Puck, didn't you hear what I said? Boy, I'll beat your ass. You better get started now. That gal ain't going to get pregnant by herself," pointing to one of the naked under to remove his clothes. "Let me show you what to do, boy. Come here, girl, and lay down on the ground so he can watch me." Unexpectedly, Pete stood up and started putting his flimsy trousers back on, and animatedly he was tying them to his waist with a piece of rope he used to keep his pants from falling down. Puck said, "I ain't doing this goddamn shit no more. Don't you have any shame? Kill me. Do whatever the hell you want to me. I don't give a damn. I ain't scared of you or any of your Albion overseas seers no more. Kill me if you want to. I'll just come back into another life even stronger and wiser than I left here, and I'll bring an army of Avengers with me against all you goddamn British demons." All the captives stopped what they were doing, were being forced to do, and sat up to listen to the heated exchange between Puck and P. Puck was a very tall, muscular, medium-sized, brown-skinned 15-year-old. Red-faced, angry, and nervous, P knew he was losing control. Puck could no longer be threatened by P or any of his overseers with the fear of death. P lifted his whip and started moving toward Puck to strike him. "Boy, who the fuck do you think you're talking to?" said P. Resolute and vitalized by his newfound bravery, Puck stood his ground. He grabbed the decorative slave-made cane that P routinely used to strike his captives with if they weren't performing to his satisfaction sexually, and said, "I'm talking to you, motherfucker." Mentally or physically, for whatever matter, P wasn't prepared for Puck's response. He hadn't publicly experienced that magnitude of bravado and insubordination from one of his captives in a very long time. Actually, P had become quite comfortable in his conviction that his slaves were too docile and childlike to challenge him. Startled into a jerk reaction, P viciously swung his whip, but instead of hitting Puck, he hit the stick that Puck had raised, and inadvertently he sliced the stick into two pieces. P reared back with his whip in his hand and determinedly attempted to thrash Puck a second time. But just as he was about to bring his whip down on Puck, the Yamasi and Gullah Geechee forces stormed the cabin led by Miko Patofar and Ganju. The foul smell of the building was nauseating and made the melanated soldiers gag. That debauched cabin stank of unwashed genitals, menstrual blood, sweat, musty armpits, urine, flatulence, human excrement, and stagnant water. But that horrific-smelling shack didn't deter Miko Patofa, Ganju, or any of the other men from executing their plan. Dembo grabbed P's musket and Kelt wrestled the whip from his hand. They told everyone to put their clothes on. Then Miko Patofa said to P, "You seem to enjoy being naked, so please continue taking off all your clothes. But we're not going to allow you to rape that poor, helpless young girl. Too bad time doesn't permit for us to slow roast your demonic ass like we did that bastard Thomas Nair for all the atrocities he committed against our people. I'm sure you read about Nair's Yamasi-style capital punishment in your European newspapers." "Oh, that's right. Your ignorant, brogue-talking ass can neither read nor write. So it's been dumb luck, treachery, and the absence of a soul that has enabled you to get all that you've taken. Our poor pedophile, it appears he's lost his perverted sexual drive and no longer wants to take off his clothes. So, men, let's finish undressing him," said Mende. The men roughhoused Pease, slapping him upside his head several times as they snatched off the rest of his grimy clothes. Whimpering, Pease said, "Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to harm anybody. I'm no different than you people are. I was just trying to improve mine and my family's financial circumstances. We really suffered a lot when we were living in Ireland." Dembo said, "Oh, so you're the victim. And are you saying that to improve your lot in life, you have to abuse other people and make them suffer, especially the original inhabitants of Turtle Island? Why are you crying now, you fucking bitch? You had to know you weren't going to get away with your depravedness forever. I could kill you right now, motherfucker, but I think it's only fitting that your punishment be meted out by the people you tortured and held against your will. Y'all have at 'em." P's biracial daughter, Tyra, whom he had been sexually abusing since she was 10 years old, was the first in line to exact her revenge. Tyra spit in P's face, and with tears streaming down her face, she said, I hate you. How could you do all those horrible things you did to me? Why? I'm your daughter, your own flesh and blood. You sold my daughters, your grandchildren, so now you're going to die. If we could kill you 100 times, those deaths could not be sufficient for all the crimes you've committed against all the people you've held captive." And then with a hatchet that was given to Tyra by one of the Yamasi military men, she grabbed P's penis and his scrotum and carelessly hacked them off while he hollered. Several of the men held his head, arms, and legs to keep him from moving. Wretches of tears, saliva, and vomit dribbled and spewed onto his exposed chest and down past his belly button, while streams of blood and watery fecal matter gushed down his legs and onto the floor. When P opened his mouth as he screamed in agony, Bacchus used a portion of the broken cane to keep his mouth pried open, while Wendy, who had taken the bloody sexual organs from Tyra, shoved them into his mouth. Puck wrapped a piece of one of the filthy sheets he had ripped up P's mouth to keep him from spitting out his blood-drenched sexual organs and testicles. Then the men dragged P outside and strung him to a pole in front of his prized home, with its symmetrical design, classic proportions, and decorative elements associated with the reign of King George I and King George II of England. The men and women took turns firing shot into P's body, and the semen-stained sheets and eloquently crafted straw mats his victims were condemned to were piled up below P's feet and lit on fire. P's family, lackeys, and sympathizers were all dragged out of his house and shot to death execution style. P's erstwhile prey cheered as his body was consumed by the fire. Lamenting, the group said, you died quicker than we wanted you to. We really wanted you to suffer. All the money and valuables in the house were taken, and the animals in the barns, the pens, and stalls were prepared for their departure. And then all P's demonically acquired edifices were set on fire. They all disintegrated as if they had never existed. The only evidence that a cow pen existed on that property was P's charred body and the pole from which it was strung. Puck, Bacchus, and Tyra, and many of the other former thuds and breeders went to Florida with Ganju. Wendy, as well as some of the other former captives, went back to North Carolina and established themselves in Dismal Swamp. In general, many of the Yamasee and Gullah Geechee defiers left South Carolina and established themselves in Florida. Others reestablished themselves in Appalachia along the Ogeechee River, while other Yamasee and Gullah Geechee people left the South altogether and established themselves in Philadelphia and New York. With the help of the Cherokee, Upper Creek, and other treacherous half-breed Indians, the British restarted their colonization scheme. However, the war fought by the Yamasee against the British must be credited with bringing an end to the domestic trade and enslaved Indians. The power, martial skills, and determinateness of the Yamasee terrified the British colonists to the point that their trade in enslaved Indians in the United States was drastically curtailed. Then Europeans focused their attention and manpower on enslaving continental Africans and other melanated people throughout the Americas. In 1732, with the assistance of the sellout Mary Musgrave, whom the Europeans called the Pocahontas of the Carolinas, James Oglethorpe seized a territory called Appalachia to the Yamasee, Yuchi, Coweta, and other indigenous people and established his capital city in Savannah and the British colony of Georgia. In Georgia, the Yamasee became known as the Yamacraw, and more unrest between the indigenous peoples and the Europeans ensued. So that was chapter 22.
All right. Damn. This book is very detailed, very deep, man. And I haven't gotten that far in the book. I remember some details from the previous chapters, but that right there, not only powerful, but it paints a picture. When you read it, you could just visualize the trauma, the butt breaking. I don't know how detailed, more than what I just heard. Excellent. This is a good read.
Right, and because I, kind of messed up a little in my reading, you'll have to read it for yourself if anyone is listening and they're intend to buy the book. Reading it for yourself, you'll really get a feel of what I was trying to achieve. Because unfortunately, when we read books about our enslavement, they kind of gloss over this. They don't make it sound like it was so bad. You even think about that movie called Jefferson in Paris, where he brings along Sally Hemings, and he's repeatedly raping this young woman, this young girl. She was only 14 when he started raping her, and he was 44 years old. They actually made it seem like she was in love with this man and enjoyed that attention that she was getting from him sexually, which is a farce. And so when you read a lot of the books or you see the movies, they make it look like, oh, it really wasn't that bad. Even the movie The Birth of a Nation, they show a European man in the bed with a young girl, but they don't really show you what this man did to have that girl in that bed. She wasn't in that bed willingly. In my estimation, they should have shown him slapping her around, kicking and punching her, and the horrible way he probably spread her legs and maybe was biting her, pulling her hair, whatever he was doing. I think that really should have been shown. And we don't show, I think when we don't show that, we really give them a pass, and then we even have our own saying, oh, it wasn't really that bad, because instead of thinking of the rape, they're just thinking, oh, they had sex. So what? I'm sure she enjoyed it.
It says consensual sex, but you see, it's ironic when it comes to our women, our young women, that when they look at black women of any age, young or old, they always say, she wanted it. It's consensual. She want to know. All forms of sexual perversion is statutory rape and actual physical rape. Period. There's nothing consensual between European men and a black woman. There's always a conflict at times. The European man, if he wants it bad, he will take it, and he takes it freely. he's been taking it freely now, even back then and still now.
Right.
So
and
a
lot of them, they weren't women, they were children. They started raping these young girls at the age of 9 and 10 and even younger. And there are documents that show that, the rape, that they were raping children. And in another part of the book, I talk about Zephaniah Kingsley, who was raping these young girls, 9 and 10 years old, slapping them around, and he would tell them, listen, if you don't want me to continue to beat you, anytime we're together, you need to cooperate with me. And if you cooperate with me and you get pregnant, now this is real, I'm not making this up. It's in the book, but I didn't make it up. He said, if you get pregnant and you have girls, I will give each and every girl $10,000 if they become the concubines of European men. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Okay, and he wrote this in his book. He has a book, I can't think of the name. It's a really long title of the book. Talking about the abuse, of our people. And if you saw the trailer from the movie I'm attempting to make, at one point I'm showing the people that are on Zephaniah Kingsley's plantation. You have the soldiers, the Gullah Geechee soldiers coming to rescue them, and you have this one handkerchief head, one coon. He says he doesn't want to leave. And so the Gullah Geechee soldiers told him it's either freedom or death. And he said that there was no place on the world that he would rather be than on the plantation with his master, Zephaniah Kingsley. And so the men actually shoot him. They actually killed this man because he refused to leave. And his wife said, you can stay here with this man if you want to, but I'm leaving. So you have these Gullah Geechee men. They're not just complacent saying, oh, wow, I found my way to freedom. I'm happy. I ain't got to worry. They continuously went to areas where our people were enslaved, and they rescued the people and brought them to their settlements if the people wanted to leave, because some of them didn't want to leave, which gets you to the point where, where the Kanye's saying slavery was a choice. Yeah, for some of our people it was a choice. They decided to stay, and when they found out that people were trying to leave, they told on them. That's why you have people telling you on Denmark BC, Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser. They were melanated people who would, well, I shouldn't even call them melanated people, coons.
And they were men.
Right.
And it was the majority were all men. Imagine that.
Right.
Being a white man.
Right, like Monday Gel.
Yeah. The white man.
The Igbo Monday Gel was one of the people who betrayed the insurrection plans. Excuse me? Denmark, yeah. Monday Joe was his name, the Igbo man. So I think it's important. What I'm saying is that it was important for me not just to write a book and to put my screenplay together, hopefully with the assistance of people who care about what I'm trying to do, to have this made into the movie. I want to show exactly what occurred. I don't want to whitewash it and make it seem like, it wasn't that bad. No, it was even worse than we could ever imagine. Even I can imagine. There's only so many words that you can put on a sheet of paper or in a book, But there's tons of information out there about the atrocities that were committed against our people, and we need to know that. We need to know that, and maybe it will, we can coincide that with what's going on now. You got Barbecue Becky. You got a man being arrested because he didn't have a helmet on his head. You got one person that was stopped because they said he had vegetation in his window, and they were going to take the vegetation back to the police station to find out if it was contraband. You know what they were going to do when they got back there? All of a sudden, that vegetation on the window was going to turn into being marijuana or some other illegal substance, or mixed with some other illegal substance, and then they were going to bring charges against him. You know, this continues to go on and on and on, and we need to know this has never stopped. This has been going on since the Europeans first started coming to America and setting up their colonies. First with the Spaniards, then the Dutch, then the French, then the British, and so forth and so on. The Germans, you know, they all came here, and they've been abusive to us, and the abuse still continues. You know, when they talk about slavery and going to Africa to get people to enslave, they never tell you the Chinese also had ships. So their behavior now is no different than it was before. They didn't have as many as the Europeans, but they did have ships. You know, and they can't act like they're innocent, because they did. They were taking advantage of our condition as well. And they're still doing that, slapping people around the Koreans, you know, slapping a woman, you know, beating women down on the ground. They've been doing this forever, and we trying to give them a pass and talk about, they have problems and this, that, and the other. Well, that's not our concern. Handle your own problems. We'll handle ours. You handle your own. They're just as abusive toward us as the Europeans are, and we need to go ahead and do something about it.
Yeah, man.
Stop going to their stores, first and foremost. Don't patronize them. You know, you want fried chicken and rice? Go home and make your own fried chicken and rice.
Good, as you noticed, that we already passed the hour, and the board looks like it's pretty busy right now. People have raised their hands now, and they want to get in. Before I open the lines, I just want to remind people, we have like 37 minutes left on the live stream before it goes to overtime. So I'm going to give the call number one time, and I'm going to give it again before it's overtime. The call number is 515-05-9783. I repeat, 515-605-9783. Press 1 if you have questions or comments. The subject matter is Chaos Reign Presents the Unconquered, chapters 11 and 22 readings by Dr. Tolagbe Ogunleye. One thing before I open line, you said that the slave master, if he said he breeds up one of a black female and she has a girl, he'll award that girl $10,000. So in my mind, when I'm hearing that, it seems to me that when he takes and rapes and abuses black females, his real intention, if he knocks them up, he really want a girl. He didn't want no boy. By default. Imagine that. I want y'all to listen good, because they want to use girls for sex objects, slaves. They make better than having produced some little half-millionaire boy.
Right.
It makes a
but
lot.
They were abusing the boys as well. They were abusing them.
They were screwing them. Yeah, they were screwing them too. They were screwing them, fucking them too. Yeah. He fuck all children, boy and girl. But I'm not going to hold anybody else's time, because I wanted to get to these lines. Could have been waiting patiently. So the first line I'll open up is 334. May I ask who is calling? Hello? 334? 334? All right, I'll come back to you.
Oh, yo, what's up, man?
Who's this?
Is that Gary? It's Sweet Soul, brother, man.
Sweet Soul,
what's
okay.
Going on, Gary?
How you doing, Sweet Soul?
For a minute,
Okay, well, you have any questions or comments for my guest tonight, the good doctor? Ogunleye?
Yeah, the doctor. Yeah, Dr. Tolagbe?
Yes.
Ogunleye.
Ogunleye, yes. Good evening. How are you?
Good. Where are you from, sweetheart?
I'm originally from New York. I'm in Pennsylvania now, but I'm a New Yorker. Even in Pennsylvania, I still consider myself to be a New Yorker. But my roots are in South Carolina and Georgia. That's where my mother and father are from.
Okay. Well, that was some interesting reading that you had going on there. So, where did you get your sources from? What kind of background, kind of studies did you do? Like, or what's your background? What's your educational background?
Well, I have a PhD in African American Studies. My area of specialization is African resistance to enslavement. Attended Temple University. Actually, that's what brought me into Pennsylvania, because when I started working on my doctorate, I was still living in New York, and I would take the train after work. I taught in New York City, and after work, I would get on a train and go to Pennsylvania, go into Philadelphia, take my classes, and then go back to New York. And I wouldn't get back until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And my husband said, enough is enough. We're moving to Pennsylvania. So that's how I found myself in Pennsylvania. I've also taught several universities. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I love it that you just said your husband. So yeah, that's good. So you believe in marriage and and the family and heterosexuality. So that's good. I'm always glad to hear when I hear a sister or any woman say they got a black man. So very good.
Right.
Good. Yeah.
And we've been married 34 and a half years.
You sound kind of young to have been married for 34 years.
Yeah. No, well, I think of myself as being young.
Okay.
And a lot of it is in your mind.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you think like an old woman, then you're going to act like an old woman.
Yeah, you're right. I'm 51, and my wife always telling me to grow up. So so you're right. Yeah, it's all in the mind. So well, good. Well, sister, so is this your only book? Because I looked you up, and this was the only book that came up.
Actually, I have 2 other books. One is called African American Names and Their Meanings. So I look at the names that melanated women are giving to their children, and I give a meaning to those names. Because I believe that the only thing that's wrong with naming your own children is that it needs to have some sort of meaning to it. And a lot of people laugh at those names and call them ghetto names. They are not ghetto names. These women don't want their children to have European names. They don't know anything about Africa, but they do have tonal. They have their own mind about what sounds pleasing to them tonally, and so that's how they've come up with a lot of these names. And so I try to do some of them a favor.
Well, that's good. Yeah, because that's deep. In fact, I was thinking about doing a show about that. The name, the naming system that the Black collective is using, and the damage that giving certain names to our children, the way kids are being held back, and the way they're acting out. And when you hear some of the names that they're given,
So, what name would you say be appropriate to give to a melanated child?
Wait, say it one more time for me. What name would I say? What?
What name will you give a melanated child, either boy or girl? A melanated child.
Melanated child.
You deem appropriate. That you deem appropriate.
Well, think about this, man. I named my daughter. I named her Renee, Nina, and then my first son, I named him Zion Cypress. So most people think that's like their all last name is Hills. So when people hear my son's middle name, they think I named him after the rap group Cypress Hills. I'm like, nah, I named him on the island that he was conceived on, Cypress, the island. So and then my youngest son is named Auburn Cedar. So I give my kids, I gave my kids names that mean something to me. So you know what I'm saying. So I and names that they can go out in society and make things happen with. But again, I can't speak to how somebody else should name their kids, but I'm thinking about doing the show where we discuss how names are being used against us, So in this day and age when we think about most companies are doing hiring online by phone, they're getting your resume first. So your resume don't have your race on it. So it's got your name, so and they call you up, first they read your name, they gotta read what they like, and then they're gonna call you up. So then they're gonna talk to you. and then they're going to ask you to come in for a face-to-face. So, you know, when a lot of people are saying, well, they're being discriminated against, well, their parents, you know, are fucking, you know, handicapping them, you know, from the jump. You know, so their names are being discriminated against, not them per se. You know, so the names are being so. But anyways, but that's a whole other topic. But I thought that was interesting that the doctor, you know, just mentioned that. So that's a book that I'd be very interested in checking out. And what was the third book that you said?
I have a book called The African Roots of Jumping the Broom. Because we really don't understand the whole. Excuse me.
Those sound like two good topics that I'd like to discuss. The African roots of jumping the broom. You're talking about marriage, then?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That would those would make some excellent topics for tonight. Wow. Okay. Well, the next time you come, next time you're on, you know, I'd love to hear you discussing either one of those books. You know, that would make for some interesting reading. So, anyway, you know, I just wanted to, you know, call in and say hello, you know, to a sister that's got a brother, and that's always good, you know, and I want to just, you know, commend you and say keep doing what you're doing. Stay positive. Keep putting out, you know, a positive message.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you just keep me in the queue, man. You know, I'm gonna lay back in the cut and wait for it to get hot.
All right, cool. All right. 1 second, people. Okay. The next line open up. Let me check my line board. Let me see. Okay. Talk Real Solutions. Who's this?
Hey, what's up, Gary? It's ABC.
Okay. ABC. Stay right there, ABC. Hold on a second. Let me see who this other line is. 864. Who is this?
Hey, what's going on? Peace, love, and power. Black power.
Okay.
That's your brother.
All right, that's your bad. Okay. All right. You can ask your question or comment, ABC.
Okay. Just two things. One, to the sister, sounds like a great book. Some of the comments that were coming up in the chat room had to do with the language that was being used, and you know, when you were reading it. And I wanted to ask you, you know, some of the words and everything sound like modern terms and modern words. And was this just about describing the scenes in the story that you gave? I think the comments pretty much were along the lines like, hey, they were using this kind of slang back in the 1800s and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Can you speak to that at all?
In terms of the slang, no, a lot of the slang that I use in the book comes right out of the 18th century. However, in terms of the language throughout the whole book, I purposely made it modern day English. Why did I do that? You think about Zora Neale Hurston. Do you know anything about Zora Neale Hurston?
Yeah, I know she was a very famous writer in the when Harlem was big and all that kind of stuff.
Right, during the Harlem Renaissance. She wrote a book, and it was made into a movie by Oprah Winfrey, and it's called Their Eyes Were Watching God. Now, a lot of students are told to read, and I was a teacher. I taught English. A lot of the students are required to read Their Eyes Were Watching God. They have real problems with the language. So the information that they can garner from reading that book is lost because they don't understand the language. And so I didn't want that in my book. So I purposely chose to use modern English in terms of the overall language of the book. However, with the terms that I use, those are terms that were used back in the 1700s.
Wow.
I didn't deviate from that. And I painstakingly went through and did research to make sure that I was using slang that was prevalent during that particular time.
No, I think that's very interesting.
You used to talk back then. That's what they used to taught a little bit back then. So, what we taught back then still used today. Imagine that.
Right. Hey, and just one more thing real quick. I've got a book that I kind of consider my Bible concerning our history, or the history of black people in America, and that's this book, Bullwhip Days, The Slaves Will Remember. I don't know if
you...
Yeah,
I'm familiar with that book.
I love that book. Are there some other books that are, when you talk about your research for this book or any of the books that you've written, are there some books or research sources that you can talk about that, will help us in continuing to better understand what it was really like to be a slave back then?
Right. And, there's so many books, I couldn't even begin to tell you. What I could do is put together a list and then have that information made available to you. In addition to using books, I use a lot of primary sources. So the book, for instance, Zephaniah Kingsley's book, and I can't even think of the name of it right now. I'd have to do some, pull up some documents. I can't think of the name of it right now. But that's a primary resource because that's something that was actually written by the man, and I took information out of his book. There's a book about the Yamasee War that was written by a man by Sims, who his information would be considered to be a primary source because it was written back in the early 19th century, although he wasn't around during the Yamasee War. But now, because it's so old, they consider that to be a primary source. But it's called the Yamasee. I guess the Yamasee, A Love Story. I can't think of the name exactly. There's a book by a man by the name of Ivers about the Yamasee War. You have Jane Landers, who does a lot of work on the people of the people in Florida, the melanated populations. And you got to be careful about what you read from her because a lot of it she tells lies. Like she talks about the settlement called Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose, and she tries to act like a lot of people were actually housed there, and that's not the truth at all. So you got to be careful. So you have to really cross-reference. But I can get a list together if you're interested of books that I think that are worth reading.
No, that would be fantastic. I can. Are you on Facebook where we can, send friend requests, or if you can give that information to Gary and he can pass it on to us.
Right. I have a website, and it's called Unconquered.movie.
Okay.
And if you go there, you can read information about the Yamasee Gullah Geechee War, and I will I'll put a book list together on that. Give me a little while, and I'm not the greatest when it comes to technology, but I'll get my son to help me to load the information up, and then you can see a list of books that I would half-heartedly recommend that you might want to read in terms of finding out more information about the subject matter that I'm talking about.
No, I very much appreciate that, and to give you some idea, as I said, that book, the Bullwhip Days, The Slaves Remember. I love that book, and that's the actual slaves talking about it, as reported by the WPA. The writers who were, and they actually wrote it in the same dialect and everything. So, I really
or we've been told that they wrote it in the same dialect. I have the book Bullwhip Days, but you also have to remember that those books were edited, and some of the stuff that those enslaved people actually said was not recorded in those remembrances. And let's take, for example, Sojourner Truth. Do you know that she spoke Dutch?
Oh, I never heard that.
She spoke Dutch. So why, when they write
she did.
her, what do you call it? Her Ain't I a Woman, which she didn't write. A European woman wrote that. But when the European woman, when she wrote it, she puts all these I's and thises and thems, like as if she had a Southern drawl, and the woman spoke Dutch. So you have to even be careful with that, what they've told you about those so-called remembrances from enslaved people.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the same thing it's the same thing when they altered the Confessions of Nat Turner. How they put in say he was a homosexual. Yeah, I tell people you have to be very careful because anytime white people try to talk about when somebody destroys them in a negative fashion, you could tell that they fabricate that bullshit. How the fuck you write about
and
Confessions?
who told you that all those people were ignorant? Think about that. How could all of the inventions that were made by enslaved Africans and even Africans, contemporary melanated people, could those people have been so ignorant that they couldn't talk properly? They're making all of these inventions that we still use today, like Garrett Morgan. I can't even think of all the people just asking me about them. The one with the light bulb, I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me probably when you hang up. Huh?
Yeah. The feminine?
You know,
the feminine light bulb?
Huh?
Yeah. The feminine.
I can't think of the name. It'll come to me. Right.
I think what happens is that we think in terms of they were enslaved. It was against the law for us to read for a long period of time, and all of this different stuff put us in a condition where it limited our availability to access, like speaking well and all that kind of stuff in this particular culture because of the way that they controlled us. And that's I think that's the way that we view it. So we don't think in terms of Sojourner Truth, speaking Dutch and all this kind of stuff.
Right. And, that's something, unfortunately, that has been done too often where, we've been led to believe that all our people were ignorant. They weren't allowed to read, and so they never ventured to read. And that's not true at all. Books were sold on the street. Books were sold in the churches before they started making it mandatory that a European man be present at all church services. That was to keep those people from moving around the way that they were moving around and doing what they were doing. But still, though, the way men stand on the corner now selling drugs, at one time you had black men or melanated men, because I try not to use the word black, you had melanated men corner, and they were selling books.
There you go. I got those books. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But they're not going to tell you that.
Yeah, I never heard that.
If you do some research, you'll find out that's what they were doing.
Now
so we've been given preconceived notions about who we are or who we were, and we're falling for it, and we need to stop. And I know I'm, saying things that a lot of people have never heard before, but that doesn't mean it's not true. So you can rest assured, I changed the dialogue in terms of making it more available for people to read and understand exactly what's going on. But when it comes to the slang, that slang existed. If you read the book, you'll see other things that I use, other words that I use, and then you'll know that I haven't tampered with the slang.
That's beautiful, sister. I appreciate you. Thanks a lot, Gary, for the time. I know some other people want to get on there, so thank you.
Yeah, because line's looking up, man.
Okay. And thank you for your input.
Okay. Shabazz, you have any question and comments? Wait, before you go, let me see how much time. Okay. I'm not giving the announcement yet. I'll wait like another 10 minutes. But before you speak, Shabazz, let me see who else will raise their hand. All ones, who's this?
Big J.
All right, write your name. All right, go ahead, Shabazz.
Well, first of all, I definitely want to thank Dr. Sister Ogunleye for her works and her contributions to reestablishing, remembering African culture. I know it is definitely a path that has taken a lot of sacrifice and a lot of devotion. And, all too many times, even on this platform, in common life, it seems like us as black people, we won't hesitate to spit on, to down talk, to discredit anything that may be of African content. You understand? It seems like we don't mind spitting on things of that, but at the same time, those very people or our people don't mind taking up for the same white man, the same white man that you were very descriptive in bringing to us. And a lot of times our people want to insist or say with a blatant ego that we are not enslaved, that we are anything but that. Do we actually still carry the chains, not saying the same chains of chattel slavery? Do we still carry the same detriments of slavery? And in a lot of times, in similar situations to slavery, as you feel, sis?
Yeah, and thank you for your comment. Absolutely, we do. And how could we not? It's not like we've set up our own system here in the United States of America. We still go to their schools. They're still educating us. They're telling us what they want us to know. But all the information that we should know, that's being withheld from us. So how could we think any other way? Then there is always going to be a few of us who are going to say, no, I don't know. I don't think that's right. Let me do a little bit of investigating. I guess that's how I've been since at least elementary school, and punished for it, told to shut my mouth, and so, I'm prepared for whatever the consequences are, or I hope that I'm prepared for whatever the consequences are. But, how could we not be? And you want to believe, you want to believe that your teachers are telling you the right thing, especially the regard of, things are changing now, but teachers at one time were really held in high esteem. Now we're beginning to see that they're committing all these sort of ungodly acts, and now we're beginning to have a different perception of who they are. But, one of the first things you learn is, go to school and get a good education and listen to your teacher. I was given that same, that same command.
The same program.
You start listening. Yeah, program, And so how could you not? So then you find we're, mentally we're beginning to escape from the plantation. And we can't criticize some of the people who are now deciding, that they want to look at life a little differently than what they have been told that life is really all about or history is all about. And so we just have to meet them where they are and try and encourage them to learn more and more and more, and then to pass on whatever it is that they've learned. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, so that, yes, it is a historical novel, but there is so much truthful information, actual things that happen that have happened in history, so that if you read that, you can say, no, what she wrote is probably real. I don't think she deviated much from the truth about this or the meaning of that. So I guess that's all that I can say about that. Yeah, we have chains on our brain, but the chains are being removed, and every day that some other horrible thing happens to us as a people, it just makes us more inclined or to think that, I have to do something differently. I have to learn who I really am. And you think about even like, what is the brother's name? Schomburg, Arthur Schomburg, when he was going to school in Puerto Rico, and he had some German teacher who was telling him that we didn't have a history. There was nothing there for him to read about us. And he said, I can't believe that. And look what he did with the Schomburg collection. And now, in New York, not only in New York, but actually you can request information or go online and find information from the Schomburg, from the Schomburg Library. So a lot of us, we are rebelling and saying there must be more information out there. I have to find it.
Sebastian.
Hello?
Yes.
There?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I have one more question, if I could. It definitely sounds like what you're speaking of is pointing the finger of how much it is going to be a necessary thing to not only be educated in different things and daily functions of the now, but being and having what we call an African worldview, in being able to navigate where we're going. Now, my question to you is, how important is it for us as a people, not for the few of us, but for the majority of us? Like the majority of us are looking at LeBron James playing the basketball finals tonight. How much of a necessity is it going to be for the majority of us to now participate in reading books like yours, in participating in engaging in discussions of our ancestors in the yesterday, their great works when they were at their pinnacle, and, also the low points. Inside being able to go forward with having a successful answer, how important is it for us to have that connection to our yesterday, or is it even, not important at all?
Right. Well, that we've been told that history is not important. You don't need to learn about history. But the expression that those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it is absolutely necessary. I don't read newspapers. I think I have to. If I read history, I could tell you exactly what's going on.
Right.
I'll know all the players, because it just keeps on repeating itself over and over and over again, and we seem to get caught up in whatever, they say on TV, but most of that stuff is not even news. It's just about some sort of social event or social event.
Engineering.
Right. And we buy into that bull crap. And we think that we've really been educated, that we've really been given news. And meanwhile, the real newsmakers, they're somewhere making decisions knowing that we are not really in tune the information that will help us to deal with whatever's coming. Look at the whole thing about voting and the Voting Rights Act. In 1838, they took the right for melanated men to vote away from them. They gave them the vote, and then they took it away from them. And if you think about it, that's something that keeps on repeating itself. Why do we have to get Congress's approval every 25 years to vote? That tells you something. But if we look at information that happened before, it wouldn't even be a problem to us. Why have we not read 100 Years of Slavery? Not 100 Years of slavery, 100 Years of Lynching. then we would look to see all these lynchings that are going on right now. There's nothing new.
Nothing.
So why are we
Right.
playing around with these people?
Right.
Because they already told you what they were doing. They haven't stopped. But we haven't taken the time to do any reading. You know, they say if you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book.
In a book. That's right.
Because we don't read. You know, a lot of people, the only book that they have in their home is the Bible. Or they might have a few magazines thrown around, you know, and people used to be into Ebony and Jet. I don't think they're into that anymore.
They have fuckery in their house. Bible,
right.
magazines, and maybe you're lucky if it's a woman, she might have some novels, most like some sex novels.
Hey, and look, today is church day, so you got all kind of church songs and all kind of other kind of stuff that doesn't belong to us as an African people, you know, that we are doing and we're pushing and promoting. So like I said again, for me, and you know, it seems like a lot of people, you know, our people have gotten to a place where we spit on people that do work, such as yourself. But we greatly appreciate the work that you do, sis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. To let everybody know, we are now approaching. It's approaching the 2-minute mark. You have 2 minutes to call in to this Blog Talk show. The number to call in is 515-605-9783. I repeat, 515-605-9783. Press 1 if you have questions, comments. Subject matter for tonight is Chapter 11-12, reading by Dr. Tolagbe Ogunleye, The Unconquered, the book she went in. All right, Big J, you have any questions or comments? And I have 4 other lines I'm going to open up after this.
Okay, now the premise of I was going to ask you, Gary, what's the topic, but I'll pass on that because you got the lengthy 2-sentence became a paragraph or 2. So let me just tell it like this real quick. I believe that it is unfair to criticize Sojourner Truth's anti-woman speech because, first of all, she was Dutch. She speaks Dutch because most New Yorkers at the time spoke the Dutch language. And second, speech was given in Ohio, and Ohio was a border state with the South because if you look at the Mason-Dixon line, Ohio was close to Kentucky and West Virginia, so you have to put that in also in perspective. So I think that was kind of unfair of criticizing Sojourner's Truth and her "Am I a Woman" speech. That's all I got to say.
I'm not criticizing Sojourner Truth, although she did some stuff that was not very kind toward melanated men. I'm saying that when people write about her, they always give her a Southern dialect. In addition to that, the speech that we've been given was not written by Sojourner Truth, and you can do the research. She did not write that speech. A European woman wrote that speech and tried to pass it off as something that Sojourner Truth said, and she didn't. She didn't. She didn't write it.
Ma'am. But the reason why I said that because the reason why I brought Ohio, that's where the speech was given at, and plus, though, there were many Southerners who live in Ohio, who and that's why I was given. That's why I mentioned the state Ohio, where she gave the state from. That's all I'm saying. I ain't trying to argue with you, man. I'm just trying to state a fact. And and about the naming conventions of children. I see that as more of a harmful that we just name children, make up any old name, and then we wonder why the children is not being successful. I say it enough. I hate that.
So, are you saying that you have to have a European name in order to be successful?
Well, I mean,
if we would embrace the names that women are giving to their children, they would do better. They'd have more self-esteem. But laughing at the names and calling them ghetto names is not helping us.
Well, according
I have to
to
name
the
my
author,
child Becky or Heather or Mary Beth.
According to the author, Marcus A. Brown, you know, he I talked to him the other day. He talking about how name convention is a detriment. Why call a child Avon? Why call a child named after a car or a commercial product? When it makes
so do you know all the
no
names?
sense.
The names that European people? Do you know the origin of some of those names?
Some of them came from Africa. Some came from Asia. Some
I'm talking about the European names.
Like James.
You know, you go and do a what do you call it on some of the names that European people have given to their children. You would be surprised. The problem that we have with the names is that we don't have any industries of our own. Because if we had industries of our own, those names would be accepted. But because European people are in control of our destiny, they laugh at those names.
That's right.
They laugh at us, and they basically ostracize us.
Well, okay. What? Oh, hold on, Shabazz. Stop being.
Wait, guys. One time, please.
Now back up.
Relax.
Now back
get the point. Don't argue with it.
But the thing is though, how many Quisquas or Shananes are around? Those names are just made up. Those names in combining one European name.
But let's not deal with Martin and that Shanae business. Okay, there are a few of us that are making mistakes in naming, but there are a lot of women who are naming their children based on their own decisions about what their child's name is, and a lot of forethought is going into those names. They're not haphazard, but we've been taught that they are because, again, European people have told us that we shouldn't do that. That we should name our children all the names that they have given us. You know why some of the women...
I don't care what...
Wait a minute. Listen to this, and then I apologize. I get kind of heated about this, and I apologize. But when European people were enslaving us, they put names on our children. And the women and the men during that particular time did not like the names that were being given to their children. So they came up with what they call pet names. So that when they were around the Europeans, they answered to whatever name the European had forced them to answer to. Wow. And then when they got among their own people, they used their pet names.
Wow.
And we still have pet names for our children. Every last one of you, I bet you, when you were growing up, your mama and your daddy put a little pet name on you. As you got older, you might have gotten rid of that name, right? You no longer wanted to be identified with that name because you said, I'm grown now. But they gave you a pet name or something similar to a pet name.
Okay. Then I have to ask this. And then what about the men? Hold on. Then what about the men who ditches the names that their mother giving them? Because you got some men walking around with a name called Davion, and that's a feminine name. So you see guys
because you said it's feminine.
Because it sounds.
Do you know in Africa? Wait a minute. Among the Yoruba people, they have names that can a man can have the name or a woman can have the name. There's no masculine and feminine, and they're not into homosexuality either.
That's
There's
right.
Only a few names.
First of all,
wait a minute. There are only a few names that are given to a male or given to a woman specifically, and a man can have that name. And a woman cannot have that name that they give to a man. For example, Olufemi. And my son's name is Olufemi, right? And it means God loves me. A woman can be named Olufemi. A boy can be named Olufemi. However, I have a son. His name is Babatunde. Babatunde means Father returns. You will never, ever see a woman named Babatunde. And if you do, there's something wrong with the person that named that woman Babatunde.
That's right.
Same thing. Yetunde means mother return. So you're never going to hear a man named Yetunde. Okay? But all the other names, any other name, my name, Tolagbe, a man can be Tolagbe, a woman can be Tolagbe. And Tolagbe means one who uplifts riches and wealth. That's what my name means. Okay? And a man can be named Tolagbe, a woman can be named Tolagbe. We could go on and on and on. So we don't need to be letting some European tell us what is feminine and what is masculine. And in the areas where we should be worried about femininity and masculinity, they don't have a problem with that. So you have trisexuals and pansexuals, and they think that crap is okay.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
all right,
right.
Big J.
That's right.
Big J. If you're there, I gotta open these other lines because we can go back and forth with this, but for the sake of time, I want to see who else have any question, comment.
Thank
you.
You
can sit back. All right, all ones. Who's this?
Petrapu, Honorable Brother Gary, the Chaos.
Hold on.
Honorable Doctor, will you say your full name again?
Angela, I gotta open another line. Stay right there. All right, let me open the next line. All once. Who's this?
What's going on? That's Alma.
Okay, that's TJ. Okay.
Okay.
Next
ready?
Line. No,
okay,
not ready.
I'm Dr.
Excuse me. I said ready.
Lord.
One second. All once. Who's this?
Yeah, what's going on? This is Alquan.
All right, this is Alquan.
Okay, can I give my name now?
Wait. Hold on. Is this going to be a question or comment? Because I want the other people to get...
I won't be allowed to communicate with her? Are you saying I don't have time because everyone else took up all the time? Is that
Angel,
what you're saying, Gary?
Listen, I want you to listen to
I'm
instructions.
doing my best.
Are you ready, Angel? All right. I'm saying this.
Okay, so first of all, my name is Dr. Tolagbe Ogunleye.
Can you spell the last name, Doctor, please?
Yes, it's Ogunleye. And the name comes from the god, the Yoruba god Ogun, who is the god of war. Ogun means he who comes to make war, and Ogun is also the god of iron. So that's where my name comes from.
And tell them what the god
people.
of Oshun is.
The god of Oshun? Oshun, she's the god of love. She's, I guess, similar to Venus.
And we're going to have Odunde soon in Philadelphia. So it made me happy to know that you've matriculated and received your doctorate at Temple University. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm so honored to know that. I am Angel Lady Love, listener, inspirer, friend, emissary. And the key here is you said so many things, but I don't think I'll be allowed to discuss it. The key here is also that I was glad that you pointed out that we are indigenous to this country. The misnomer to think that these degenerated beings were enabled to bring strong warriors from another continent to this continent is the biggest lie. We were already here. So I'm glad you made that known. And also, I find it interesting that you brought to us the information about the 1700s. Honorable Sister Ottawa would have to discuss the fact that she brought to my attention for the first time, and someone else did also yesterday, about the queen that was highly melanin enriched Moor that had married the King George. Are you familiar with that in the 1700s?
Yeah, Queen Charlotte Sophia.
Yes. And this is what I'm trying to bring to people. Now, I need to hear you pronounce or either spell the word, did you say Yamasee?
Yamasee.
How are you spelling that?
Yamasee.
Okay.
And
I've heard
you
that.
See it spelled with just one S as opposed to two. So it depends on who's writing will determine how it's spelled. But that's
Yes.
how I spell it, Yamassee. And I should also say, when I gave you the name, Tolagbe Ogunleye, I forgot to say eel, because there is, I am a Moor.
Okay.
So my appellation has the eel on the end.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now, the other variable, I wanted to mention a little bit about Wendy, but I don't think I have time that you pointed out. But the other situation, we are the Arawaks. Am I saying that correctly? Arawak?
Yeah,
indigenous?
Arawak. Uh-huh.
Okay, and that is what was called the several tribes, several nations of tribes, which included the Cherokee, which is not really their real name. And we taught these Caucasoids how to make the longhouses and other variables, because you well know we are pacifist people. But also the real slaves, the first ones they brought here were of their kind, Caucasoids and children.
That's
especially
right.
the little girls. They paid the aristocrats paid the daddies of these girls for them. They had to stay longer than 7 years. 7 years was the indentured time for the indentured slaves, who were, most of them owed the aristocrats debt, and they had been in jail. They had no value. So therefore, those are the kind of Caucasoids that had to sleep outside in all kind of weather. If they got sick, they did not get medicine as the one in the big houses. And the way you pointed out of how the children and women were hidden, many times the ones that they would bring into and to make their slaves were the children for the most part, sometimes the women, but they were mostly children. And a lot of people are not understanding that. And I'm so grateful you pointed out how these people stunk like heck. Can you imagine the pilgrims? So I really bow before you, and I thank you. I look forward to more times with us. God bless you. I am Angel Lady Love, listener, inspired friend, and mystery.
Okay,
thank
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Angel Love. All right, let me see what's next. TJ, what's up, brother? You have any question, comments for tonight's show?
Yeah, I was just checking out the good doctor, and I appreciate the conversation. And I was gonna wonder, when you get people, some people, there's a system they put together called the peer review process, right? And
called the what? Will you repeat that?
The peer review process.
Oh,
and
peer
some of the
review.
information and some of the information that you said might not be agreed upon with the peer review process, right? And a lot of black folks is trying to start going that way, and they looking toward that process pretty much to validate things. So how do you deal with that?
I don't care about no peer review. Listen, I taught at the University of Arizona as well as Chestnut Hill College.
I'm sorry, doctor. Is it flawed, would you say?
It is flawed, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Even if you have another melanated individual reviewing your information, if they're all entangled in the European system, they're not going to review you properly. I don't care anything about a peer review. And if I did, there were a lot of things I probably would have never done. But I've never let someone try and control what it is that I've read. And I must be thankful. Some of the articles that I've written were published in the, Malefica Sante's thing, Journal of Black Studies. And so he didn't tamper with my stuff. But I'll tell you what, I wrote a chapter in a book for a woman on the women of ancient West Africa. And she took out the information I wrote about women fighting alongside men. She didn't want that in there, because she wanted to make like there was conflict between men and women, and that when the women were fighting, they weren't fighting, to help the family. They were just basically fighting for themselves. So that happens all the time, where they'll edit out the work that they don't like. If you say something that doesn't coincide with their mindset. So you'd be a fool if you worry about peer review. Who are the peers that are reviewing you? And who gives them the right to review you? You know, even like the information about the Harlem Renaissance. We're only beginning to find out about what exactly went on in the Harlem Renaissance, and who was considered to be an acceptable peer-reviewed individual during the Harlem Renaissance. And you see the fighting going on. You got Marcus Garvey,
right?
who decided, huh?
I said I agree with you, but how do you suppose we determine what's factual information, though? And I mean, because that's the only process that we got, and I guess, yeah. And I looked it up, and I found flaws in it. I found it where it went wrong a few times, right? And I understand that it can be biased also, but that's the only process that we got. So how do you suggest we
No, that's not
validate
the only
things?
process we have.
Right.
If you want to follow a European mindset and follow whatever it is they're saying.
That's what I'm looking to get out of that. So that's what I'm asking. What's the alternative to that?
Look at the writing of some melanated people, trustworthy melanated people, and they'll tell you who you need to read and who they think has written something that's of note, of value. You know, we have to get away from these European people trying to control our destiny. We have to decide what's important to us, by us. I know he got crazy with that, right? He made it seem like FUBU was going to be for us, and then he changed it up on us.
When you get writers like Ivan Van Sertima, and they came before Africa, I mean before Columbus.
Bill Columbus. Mm-hmm.
People discredit that book because the Europeans don't agree with what he's saying, and so
right.
And then in the black community, we got to fight. We got to fight
but
now. We got some people that say, well, hey, no, it don't. But I'm saying but now we still got to fight because we got some of us that refuse to believe that we have the ability to even make it to the West before the European brought us here. Like we literally refuse to believe that way, and we just won't think that way. And so without saying it, almost like how the guy who was saying about names, without saying that he believes Shaniqua is inadequate because the Europeans do. It's basically what he's saying. He probably don't even understand that's what he's saying, but he's saying it like that. And so
right.
Just like with this people who saying that
do not
you couldn't be on the West. No, listen, I know you want to fight, but listen, no, that's not. I'm not trying to talk.
No. I came here to fight now.
Anyway, good doctor, could you mute him for me, Gary? Anyway, when you get people that's dealing like this, you know what I mean? I lost my train of thought with this guy. So, but anyway,
don't make no representative.
What they're saying is that the black man could not have come west without the great Europeans bringing us this way. You know what I mean? So, and we, even though we got these black writers who've written about this, we'll say that's a total lie and that's pseudo based on what the Europeans saying, and it benefits the European for us to believe this way, but for whatever reason, we still want to believe. I mean, we agree with that. How do you deal with that? How do we supposed to get around this, or do we just say, never mind?
But we're changing, aren't we? Changing.
I believe
we're no
longer,
we're and we've been talking about that forever. We have to learn to read between the lines, and we've been reading between the lines for a real long time because if we weren't, we wouldn't have the things that we've established on our own. How do you think that people, these melanated beings, could run away from their enslavers, set up communities in Florida, settlements in Florida, fight against Europeans who tried to take them back into captivity if they had been captive, because there were settlements that existed in Florida for almost 200 years, and they had never been enslaved. Some of those people had never, ever been enslaved. You had melanated men who burned the White House down and all the other buildings in Washington, D.C.
And they don't talk about that.
Because they were sick of that crap. Huh?
And they didn't talk about that. They never talk about that.
They don't talk about that, and that's in my book.
Well, we led to believe that all the people who was put into slavery, who decided to fight back, died. So that's why when Kanye said what he said, people was highly offended, as if everybody who, I mean, like nobody. I don't understand. How do you feel about what Kanye West said? I guess
Kanye West
said some of us, unfortunately, that cooperated with their enslavers, but that wasn't all of us. But he's right to that extent if he's talking about them. But I really don't think Kanye was talking about that because he's enslaved.
Yeah, he got his own little level. But it was different levels to that though, where some of us fought and made it and survived, and you know we got stories of that, but I guess we don't honor that because it's not peer reviewed and it's not.
But you're talking about survival. We're talking about people that decided that they were going to thrive, and they did.
They survived and thrived.
They thrived. They built settlements, and they didn't need anybody else. They had people coming to them to do business with because they had the best of everything. And some of those same people, when they left out of Florida, they went into Oklahoma, and they started Black Wall Street. Well, they were some of the people that were responsible for the starting of Black Wall Street until the United States government allowed that those towns, because it wasn't just one town, they allowed those towns to be burned to the ground. And others went into Mexico and started settlements there. But they're not going to tell you about that. So there was a lot of
agreements. Was it a lot of agreements that the black people had with the Europeans here also, and that went bad?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. In terms of treaties, what treaty has the United States ever upheld? None of them.
None.
But they realized that. We would be a fool nowadays to sign a treaty with them and expect it to hold weight. Just based on past experiences with them.
The Morris speaking goes to the same way. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Alquan had a question for you, Doctor. Yeah, Alquan. You have something to say, Alquan?
All right, thank you. Yeah, I have.
And I apologize because I'm so strong about time for us to look at life differently. We don't need them. If anything, they need us. We don't need them, but we need to know that we are capable. We can do anything we want to do, but the first thing we have to do is change how we perceive the world.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I have 2 questions for the
wait,
doctor.
Alquan, 1 second. Let me check one line. What did that want? Hear me? 269. What did that one? Okay.
That one on the line.
Yeah, he didn't press 1, but I'll come back to him next time. All right, go ahead, Alquan.
All right. The first question is, when you make mention of melanated peoples, does that encompass who? All melanated peoples, including like people like the East Indian, Oceanic peoples, and Black Arabs and all those kind of people?
Let them take care of themselves. They don't worry about us. I'm talking about us right here in the United States of America. We need to help ourselves before we start talking about somebody else. And they don't care anything about us.
Okay, now I was curious
because
you say melanated people. That seems like it encompasses quite a few people instead of just one specific people.
Okay, I'm talking about melanated people in the United States of America. You even look at like the East Indians that come here. They look at us like we're dirt. But they treat the Dravidians among them the same exact way. There's another name for the Dravidians. I can't think of it right now. Maybe it'll come to me. Where they would make them walk with brooms tied around their neck because they said that their footprints didn't even deserve to be left behind. So as they walked, the brooms that were behind them would sweep up their footsteps even. And the ancestors or the posterity of the people that did that to them, or maybe even some of the people that were doing that to them, they're over here in this country and they're doing basically the same thing. They look at us like we're dirt. We're nothing. Same thing with the Arabs.
It's kind of weird, though. The most successful East Indians seem to be the darker ones, though.
But they don't treat us. They think they're better than we are. They got dark skin.
Well, you know,
they
that's
don't
cultural
identify with
differences.
us.
Jamaicans and a lot of Caribbeans and Africans, they think that they're better than us as well. So, you know,
That's
there's
true.
definitely a cultural difference. Well, let me ask you this, too. Are you like what they call a black American? Like that's the only roots that you have? You don't have any ties to any other country or anything?
Well, I'm not black. I'm a Moor, a Yamasi Moor, a Geechee. I don't use the word black. Okay.
So
my roots are in South Carolina and Georgia.
Only?
My mother said that there's a line of my people that were in the Caribbean. I'm thinking that it might have either been Bermuda or the Bahamas. But a lot of us, we need to know that European people, they would take us from one plantation to the other. So one day you're in South Carolina, the next day you're in Barbados, then you moved over to Jamaica, you know, and then, you know, they have some sort of decision, whimsical decision, and then they bring us and stick us in what do you call it, in Virginia or wherever they took us. So I don't think that we should be looking at the people of Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, all the areas throughout the Americas. We shouldn't look at them any differently than we look at ourselves.
Okay, well,
now,
I mean,
if you
look at the
really
East Indians
differently, like some of those Dominicans, they don't have any respect for us, and we don't need to have any respect for them.
Well, so that same hold true with the rest of the Caribbean, not just Dominicans. I mean, because, again, we're dealing with cultural differences, so that's why people treat people and the white man's propaganda on us as well. Well, what I was leading to is your name. Is that your birth name or?
No, it's not my birth name, but it's my name now. I don't know why people do that. You know,
no, I was just getting at how you chose it. And, you know, that's where I was trying to go.
My husband, he chose the name for me based on who I am. That's how I got the name One Who Uplifts Riches and Wealth. And because of my love of history and always trying to help my students, he gave me the name Tolagbe. And, of course, my married name is Ogunleye. And as I said before, Ogunleye means God of iron, as well as he who comes to make war.
Oh, okay. So the last response is, so you didn't have any, like, last name Bay, which a lot of Moors have?
I'm an eel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've taken the name Eel.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, you say Eel, not L. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So like I said before, even going through and what she has read tonight, 2 chapters, 11 and 22, I hope that people were very informative and know a little bit more deep of how our people used to deal with their oppressors. And then it dealt with them by, you know, we shall overcome, or sing some nice little hymns or Christian songs. They dealt with them, you know, gangster-like, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, what people that said people back then, even today, that we look at people now, see, y'all not about that life at all, period, you know what I'm saying? You know, to get that inspiration, I'm saying, don't let nobody take advantage of you. And another thing, because Ogunleye, when you read, even when I go back to get about how they were butt breaking, it really goes very descriptive of most of the bucks did not want to choose to continue creating more product. So there was resistance there. If you look at now the black males now that operate in that sexual fashion, they still feel as though, you know, it's still a what they call epigenetic trait of butt breaking. Sexual, just pure fucking. You know, and most people don't understand. You use fucking as only 5 or 10% of energy you use up, but to our society, because a lot of males is a training and epigenetic thing that they feel, you know, to be more of a male, you got to be fucking all over the place and passing out your seed, which is not a no-no. You know, you cause more problems than you need.
I was looking at something on Facebook where they had these men, and I don't know where they were from. I saved it onto my timeline so I could look at it later. But they have a thing called the dick dance.
What's that?
Have you seen that? It's called
I
a
never
dick
seen it.
dance, where the men are dancing and making sure people can see how long their penises are. What's that all about?
What?
Yeah, look it up on Facebook. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to look at that. That sounds disturbing.
I couldn't believe it. If you can't find it, I saved it onto my timeline, and I'll send you a copy of it. But again, like you're saying, we're of the mindset now that the only thing that we have to offer is our sexual being. But we've been taught that that's all we have to offer.
It's a low energy thing. It's a low-level energy that is, if it's not put proper use, you'll drain yourself. And
right.
With that lower energy, and if you remember, Sloppy, when I did my Facebook Live, which I share on multiple pages, that I talk about, mastery of impulse. A lot of people never heard this. This is something that Amos quote in one of his books about one of the things that, few things in regards to adulthood, manhood, and we can say womanhood, but we say conversation we deal with men, that a man has to be master of his impulse. And one of the things that impulse is, that deals with not only with things like taking of drugs and, use of other, but also sexual perversion. And mind you, if the black male for the centuries that was trained to even be a buck, to be just breeder, obviously for him to show that he is validated to the European man, he has to screw his woman because this is his way of fighting back oppression or his constant attack by another man by saying, I'll just have sex with your woman, and that is my payback from what the rape, torture you do for me for the last 400 years and today. To me, that is very low level and very
That's right.
non-masculine. It's actually it's kind of weak. At times you take someone, and mind you, people got to say the European today gives you his woman. Because if he was real serious today, he would still be cutting your penis like he did now. And really, he could go back and cut people's penis right now as we talk on his line, which he probably is doing right now. Because if you look at a lot of those hangings, they're not really showing the real detailed hangings. Am I right?
Right.
People forgot to say, they just don't hang a black male or a black woman. When they hang a black male, they cut his dick off and hang him. They're not showing you that shit. So that's my shit. And the reason why they're not going to talk or show, because they don't want people to know how really severe it's that. Nothing really hasn't changed. What people read in those books or hear about, it still goes on. It was continue going on, and it's still going on. So
that's right.
You've got to be aware and not just wake up, but you have to be on guard now. Yeah, because nowadays it's freely doing it now out in the open where they want people to see that and put a fear. And all thing you're going to see, most of these black males they're going to probably deflect. Hell, some of them are going to say that they're going to continue sleeping with European women or non-black women and feel this is their revenge of getting back at the European man, which to me is very weak. Very weak. Very
That's
sad.
right.
But anybody, I don't know if you want to chime in what I said or anybody wants to disagree or agree with what I just said. My lines are open. So. I hear dead silence. I guess they are.
Is someone out there still?
Yeah, they're out there. They're listening. But,
well, I thought there was someone on the line.
Matter of fact, there is. ABC in the chat room, he said he wanted some clarification on your Caribbean and American roots.
Right.
He said he wants
my people.
Let me
my father
that.
is from South Carolina, and my mother is from Georgia. I should say my father was from South Carolina because he's deceased. I think we also have people in Alabama. Someone in on my mother's side said that we have people in some area of the Caribbean. She couldn't tell me exactly where it is, but because of the name, I'm thinking that it had to be an English-speaking colony, and I haven't been able to verify. Although my mother told me that we had people from the Caribbean in our family, but she didn't know where. And when I asked I guess that's my second cousin, I don't even know if she's still alive today. If she is, she's in her 90s. She also said that we have people from the Caribbean. I'll tell you what, my father told me that he was not an African, that we were not from the African continent. And his people are from Beaufort, South Carolina, the Sea Islands in South Carolina. And he said he was not an African.
Hey,
yeah, I agree with that.
Can I just get in there real quick, Alquan, because he put that on me, and I'm not the one that was asking for clarification. That was Alquan that was asking. But let's just put it out there.
In the chat room, we were going back and forth over it. So
let's just put it out there though, and it's no problem. I mean, I think it's a decent question or discussion. The discussion that me and Alquan have, some of us have here on TRS, is that there's a distinction between Africans and black people in America, or indigenous people, black people in America, and indigenous people on other continents and this kind of thing. And I understand that obviously there's different cultural stuff, but when we talk about racism, a lot of us say that, look, all of us are dealing with the same shit, so, we all fighting this thing. But some people say that, no, the black people over there are a part of this. It's like we want to stay separate from each other. So what do you think about this idea, Doctor? Should we all be distinct, and do we need to separate from each other when we're talking about fighting white supremacy or something? Or is this something that we need to work together on? How do you look at this?
The truth must be told. There are a lot of Africans who do not identify with us. They look at us as being nuisances, menaces to society, and that can, that's being understated what I'm saying.
Media.
And when,
by the media.
And when you, what do you call it? Whenever we have some sort of protest, they don't show up. They think that they're better. They think that they're different. I know when my husband first came here, and he's Nigerian. He's a Yoruba man. When he first came here, he was told to stay away from us. And they even told him that he should carry his keys with him all the time and hold them in his hands in such a way until the pointed parts of the keys would stick out between his fingers. And if a melanated woman, a so-called black American, ever approached him, that he should just take his keys and start jabbing at us.
Wow.
And a lot of them, they have that mindset. They don't look at us as being in the same struggle with them. And then I have to say, they come here and they think that they're better than us. But how could you leave a continent? The continent of Africa has already been recolonized. You got the Europeans there. You got the Asians that are there. And what do the people have? They have a Bible and a few churches, a lot of churches, a lot of mosques, a lot of churches.
Yeah.
And they're here trying to get shoes and bags and phones.
I find it funny what you just said, because I find that the West Africans I've run into over the course of my life, they're the ones who act as the way you describe, but yet when it comes to like Ethiopians, then they seem to be all in, both of them.
But look at the Ethiopians, though. They're the only African people that my research has told who were not colonized by the Europeans.
Yep. Even though they did get conquered by Italy for a little while, but they don't call it a colonization.
Well, they fought against the Italians. I don't think the Italians were ever able to develop a stronghold in Ethiopia, were they? And I can't say I'm.
Salafi, let me. I want to give a disclaimer. Most people didn't know that Ethiopia was never conquered. That's a lie, because they were brought under the religion of Christianity, so they were conquered a little bit long time ago. But they don't talk about
Egypt. Egypt was conquered. Oh, Ethiopia.
Yeah, but Ethiopia was conquered because they follow a religion given to them by the Nigerians. And people want to find that out. I'll give them the booklet that talks about that. I got to dig it up again, because this is what I heard in a previous broadcast. And a lot of people get mad at me about this because they feel that there's no area in the African continent never colonized by foreign invaders. Yes, there was. Because anytime you fought a religion, you've been conquered. That's simple.
Okay.
Joshua,
and I have to agree with that. But I mean, in terms of taking over the landmass, now what happens today? That's something completely different.
Well, the landmass.
And then maybe I'm wrong.
Think about it, if they give you a religion, it's only a matter of time the invaders will come in and start slowly take over the landmass completely. We all know Selassie fought the Italians. But the Italians wanted land for themselves, the Italians for themselves. So they choose Ethiopia, but they lost that battle because of Selassie.
They chose, but they had the only opportunities they had because other Europeans had everything else. So that's why they took Libya.
Remember, Mussolini wanted his people. Italians to own just like every other part, because the Germans own some part of Africa, and we all know if we did research. But Ethiopia, Italians wanted Ethiopia. So like the great intelligent intelligent warlord like Selassie, he managed to think fought his way out of that one against the Italians with the help of the Europeans, which Selassie went into the bosom of the Queen, the Queen of Europe.
Hello.
But anyway,
can I say something?
One last thing before we have a quick.
No.
No, it's going to be extremely quick. Extremely quick.
No.
Really.
I got Alquan. I want Joshua to speak now because I'm only got a few minutes left in the show. What you need, Joshua? Your line's open. You may speak.
Yeah, thanks for muting me, buddy. But anyway, I want to say I want to answer a question, and the people that you was talking about, sister, was from they're called the Untouchables. That's what I think that's the name that you were looking for.
No, not the Untouchables. There's another.
The Untouchables.
There's another name.
Some of the Daleks.
Yes, Daleks.
Okay. What I want to ask. Okay, I do know that we have a lot of different groups, sects and things in our community. We have we got the Nation, we got the Moors, we got the Hebrews, we got these brothers over here, we got you got the Garveyites, etc. I want to know that. I mean, how can we come to a understanding of one another here in America as people here in America? How can we come to understand the unity? And when I say some type of unity, because I know all of us ain't going to make it. All of us don't want to unite. I understand that. That's number one. Number two, what advice as far as our relationships are concerned between black men and black women? And I say the word black in general because I want to go to a bunch of trips and stuff like that. How do we come together? Because that tend to be the bulk of our problem. That tend to be some of the theses of our problem. The fact that we tend to be at odds with each other. And then the second, and the third thing I want to want you to answer. How can what solutions do we have? I mean, how can we what solutions do you think that we should do in dealing with our situation here in America? And those are three things I want to add because I my thought process is that we are really in a situation where we're really in trouble to a point because we keep thinking that with this and with that and this, but at the same time we continue to have these problems. And that's what I always say to black people. I always say, from my research and understanding, the American government need to deal with our issues. We have to have a conversation with America, a better conversation, and change the conversation, because the conversation that we've been having with them is not working. Talking about education and the problems of our people, these conversations are not working. We need a more hardcore conversation to deal with white folk and say, hey, look, this is what it is. Fix the problem or else, or what? What do you want us to do here? I mean, and I think this in some cases, I think the conversation that we need to have with them. So can you give me some? I panned that out like that, but is there a way that you can talk about that and give us some solutions as far as that's concerned? The black men and black women problem, or a problem with sexism as far as black people, and what can we do as far as being in America? What solutions do we have for for our survival here in America.
Right. Well, you know that Malcolm and other people have been saying forever, leave your religion at home. You know, let's build on our commonalities. Let's, we're never going to solve a problem talking about religion. That's first and foremost. Right. Number two, we need to turn these TVs off. And I'm talking primarily to these women now. You know, and I'm a woman, but some of this crap that I see that, other females do, it's sickening. You know, we put demands on men that have nothing to do with the well-being of our families. How you going to get angry at a man because he didn't give you flowers and candy for Valentine's Day? Who told you you have to celebrate Valentine's Day? Who even told you have to put on a white dress and spend all that money, get Vera Wang and the rest of them fools all your money for a wedding dress that you're going to wear one time? And then if you don't get the wedding that you want, you get angry. My husband and I, we spent about $200 on our wedding. And that was just for the food, for the people that were coming to the house after our civil ceremony. We could talk about marriage certificates and birth certificates and whatnot, but this is not the story for that, and neither could I talk about it really articulately. So we put all sorts of demands on our men, and we shouldn't be doing that. Don't judge your man based on what some other woman has told you that you need to do.
Right.
We have to stop that immediately.
Right.
If Christmas time, it ought to be a time where your man comes to you and say, honey, I paid the mortgage, or I paid the rent, or I put some money aside, and, when I get some more money, we're going to buy a brand new car because I know you need one. You're trying to get the kids here, there, and everywhere, instead of, I have to have this from Zales, this diamond, and this necklace, and this, and I have to have this dress and this pair of shoes for this particular event. That stuff is getting us into trouble. And it's not like the money staying in the community. It's leaving out of the community and going and enriching somebody else. So we really have to, change our mindset about that. And then the men, in my estimation, they have to stop looking at other women and thinking that that's a more viable mate. And look at what happened to Bill Cosby and all these other men, where Bill Cosby left his woman to go and be with how many women? 50? I'd like to find out how many diseases did he bring home to his woman.
Is white.
Right. And those women, 30 years later, you're accusing him of rape? And not only that, they were going back 2 and 3 and 4 times. How can you be raped more than once?
I tell you, man.
Right.
Me seems a joke.
Yeah.
So we have some things that we need to work on, and we need to know that we need to work on them.
Right. And as far as us having all this sexism in our community, because I was in the nation at one time. You know what I'm saying? I was in the nation. Okay, I was Anthony 3X. I was Anthony 3X. All of us have that. Most of us have that. So, and I learned. I realized then that. Go ahead.
I don't want to rush you, brother, but this show might unexpectedly cut off because it's already past overtime. So if you can keep it very short, and Alquan, I'm gonna have you ask one last question. So
okay,
go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was just going. Am I going first, or is he going? Am I going out there?
No. Let me finish this, Alquan. And that's all I have to say. That I was in that stuff, and I know what it does. I know how it separates us from each other. I know how it So I think that we need some better ideas on how to deal with our brothers who are Moors, or brothers who are African centered, whatever the case might be. We need better solutions for that, because I think that's part of the problem too. But I think that the thesis of it, that the black men and black women must unite, because if that ain't happening, ain't nothing happening, ain't nothing popping off. Okay, and that's for real. And that's for real. So, and we got to stop bashing black men, and black women have to stop trying to address black men and bash them. And let women address the black woman, and let the black man address the black man. That's what needs to happen. And that's all I got to say.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Let me just say this real quick. Dr. I noticed that when you got on, you sounded just like a regular on here. And I was glad that Angel Lady Love called in because I was thinking to myself, man, this is Angel Lady Love, but she called in, so that let me know that you two are different people. It's funny how you two happen to be from Philly, the Philly area at the same time. I think that's just funny.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is happening here in the Philly area. A lot of conscious folks.
Yeah. A lot of fake Muslims walking around the Philly area, too, though.
That's true. That's true.
So you don't know whether they're about to say Assalamu alaikum or give me your money, you know?
Yeah, that's true. You're right about that.
Come on, Alpha, man. Point, please. Sir.
All right, that was it.
Okay.
All right, Tolagbe, we have reached the end and conclusion of tonight's broadcast. For closing remarks, if you could give everybody where they could find or the book or the website, or any information you want them to know.
Okay. Well, the name of the book is called The Unconquered, the Yamasee and Gullah Geechee War. It's available on Amazon, and you can read it for free. And I find that really problematic that I'm telling people they can read it for free using Amazon's unlimited program, and still people are not buying into that. Let's say even if you don't want to read the book, to help a sister out, go in there, download the book, and just turn from page to page to page until you get to the end, and I'll get credit for it. Don't even open up. Don't even read it if you don't want to. But just help a sister out by at least going in there and downloading the book and turning some pages, so that I can get credit for it. But if you decide to read it, I think it's worth reading. It's packed with information. Help me out. Website is called theunconquered.movie, and you can go in there. You can see trailers from the movie that I'm attempting to make, because it's not just writing the book that I'm concerned about. It's actually bringing my words to the screen so that people can see exactly what we've accomplished. And I think my book is male-centered because I talk more about men and the role of men and how men have helped to continue our ability, or the ability of the people that I talk about, to thrive in this country, what they did. And I show a lot of respect for them, because I had a lot of respect for my father when he was alive. He wouldn't let anybody mess with me. He'd let them know quick. If you mess with my daughter, you got to mess with me. And he always took care of his family. And if we go based on what we see in the movie or in a lot of books, like that crap, The Color Purple, you would think that all men are like that. I don't know any man like that. There wasn't a man in my family. That wasn't my father. And so I think it's important for books to come out that show men in a positive light. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. So my book is male-centered, men-centered. But I do talk about the women, like when I read in the Send-Off, where you find the women, they did their part in eliminating some of the people that they thought were going to be a problem as well. And I think that the way that the women eliminated the men, eliminated the poor Albion trash, was prescriptive. The men took care of the grown folk, and they said, okay, now you women take care of the kids, the children, and get rid of them. So read the book. I think you'll find a lot of good information in it. And like I said, help a sister out. Go in there and turn some pages if you don't even feel like reading the book. But you might start reading something and say, wow, let me read some more of this. And I skipped from first time I read chapter 1 and 2, and then I skipped to chapter 11 and 22, so that you could read the other stuff that comes in between them and find out, wow, I thought there was stuff in the chapters that she read, but check out the stuff in those other chapters. And I talked briefly about Blackbeard the pirates, and we don't even do anything about pirates. I don't want to talk too quickly, but I have some other stuff that I'm working on. But Blackbeard the pirate, he was a melanated man. They didn't call him Blackbeard because of the size of his beard. They called him, and the color, size and color of his beard, they called him Blackbeard because he was a melanated man. His father's last name was Beard, and he was melanated. You know, so there's all sorts of information that you're gonna get if you read my book, and about other, you know, pirates and how, you know, they didn't melanated people. They tried to help us. They, you know, they came from the same situation that we came from, and whenever they could help people that were still enslaved, they did whatever was necessary to help to try and improve our situation. So just read the book. I'd be most appreciative of it.
All right, Doctor.
Okay.
This thing might shut off.
Oh, I sent that a video to you.
Yeah, I've seen it. We'll talk more.
Okay.
Probably after the show. I'll give it a call after I watch it. But for all that, listen to tonight's broadcast. Thank you again for listening in. The title of the broadcast you just listened to is Chaos Serene Presents the Unconquered Chapter 11 and 22 by Dr. Tolagbe Ogunleye. Look forward for next month's breakdown into this book. So be on the lookout at the end of June. We'll go into more further chapters. But other than that, thank you for listening to tonight's broadcast. Until next time, take care. Good night.
Okay, thank you.